Welcome to our weekly live stream coming to you from the Huckabee Theater in Nashville. Technically Hendersonville, just outside one of the suburbs of Nashville, where we tape our show every weekend for TBN. Pam Case, senior producer for the show, joins me on Fridays to ask the questions that you send in, and she is with me now. We always ask you to send your questions in the chat. Get them in as early as possible. We're more likely to get to yours. And if you send us a super chat, it bumps up to the top a little quicker. We've got moderators watching the chat for your questions. We hope you'll send them starting right now. We have a lot to cover today. Joe Biden made a big announcement about his presidency. Half the women in his administration are women. Yes, you heard that right. We'll talk about that in a moment. We'll also discuss the debt ceiling fight, as well as how Karine Jean-Pierre is handling Biden's document scandal, or not. And we'll talk about the egregious move by House Republicans in removing spy lovers, liars, and anti-Semites off of committee assignments. And they don't like it. Plenty of other news to get to today, as well, as you can see on the rundown. On the right of your screen, we'll get to as many of those topics as we can, if we have time. Our favorite comment from last week's live stream is from David Mann, who said this, quote, "It seems McCarthy has developed a conscience. Pray he keeps a moral compass to lead," end quote. You know, I'm not as surprised as some people that Kevin is doing his job and doing it well. And he certainly has been impressive in these first couple of weeks of his speakership. As you may know, every week on the live stream, we try to do a little pre-poll. Pam conducts that, and she's going to tell us about it right now.
Okay, I want you to hang in there with me as I try to read this. How many classified documents could Joe Biden chuck if Joe Biden could chuck classified documents? Joe Biden, the woodchuck. So 10 to 100 or what? Or 0 to 10. Here we are. 73% say 10 to 100.
Okay.
Documents, if he could chuck documents. What? 19%, and 0 to 10 documents, 6%. Very clever writing in the control room today, by the way.
Yes.
So over 200 people voted in our pre-show poll today, too.
Very
so
good.
Nice to have you along early.
Well, we hope that you enjoy watching the live stream. If you do, do us a favor and hit the like button. We want to get to 1,500 likes before the end of the stream. That helps us get a boost with the YouTube algorithm. That is not an Al Gore rhythm, because Al Gore has no rhythm. This is an algorithm, which is very different. But it means the video will be shown to more people. So smash that like button, and let's get to over 1,500 as quickly as possible. If you've not yet subscribed to our channel, subscribe. Do it right now. Just touch that subscribe button. And then hit the notification bell right after you do that. That way we'll let you know when we're going to be doing features just like this one. We have a lot to get to, so let's jump right into it. First of all, let's take a look at, I guess we could call this the best of Biden. This is Joe Biden. Really, I don't know where he comes up with this stuff, but he's just basically saying that the Catholic bishops and the Pope really don't care that he is a pro-abortion advocate. I'm not sure that's true, but he thinks it, and he said it. Watch.
Catholic bishops are demanding that federal tax dollars not fund abortion. No, they are not all doing that. Nor is the Pope doing that.
Yeah, suddenly Joe knows what the Pope is thinking and knows that the Pope really isn't pro-life, and neither are those bishops. They just say that, I guess, to maybe mollify some of the rank-and-file Catholics out there.
You think?
Beats me. This is one that is utterly bizarre. You know, Joe Biden last fall said that COVID was over. We really don't have a pandemic anymore. Then he kind of walked that back and said, well, maybe we do. And his own staff was sort of saying, yeah, we still have a big issue. We got to deal with it. It's like they can't let go of the control over people's lives. Well, this week he's asked about COVID, and this may be one of the most bizarre responses I've ever seen. It's one thing to punt the ball, but you normally punt it on the field, not up in the stands. But that's what he did. Let's watch.
What's behind your decision to end the COVID emergency?
COVID emergency will end when the Supreme Court ends it.
That's the most weird thing I've ever heard. The COVID emergency will end when the Supreme Court ends it. When has the Supreme Court been involved in dealing with public health issues, ever? Are they the new health agency for the United States? And why would we cede that decision over to a court? That's a judicial branch. It's not an executive branch. It's just maybe one of the more bizarre statements Joe Biden has ever made. And he makes some bizarre statements.
Goodbye, Fauci. Hello, Supreme Court. I don't know.
I don't either. It's just insane. This is one, though, that I love. When Joe Biden is talking about the women in this administration, I'm not sure if he's confused or maybe it is an honest statement about women in his administration.
More than half the women in my cabinet, more than half the people in my cabinet, more than half of the women in my administration are women.
What?
Did you get that? More than half the women in his cabinet are women. And you wonder, if half the women in his cabinet are women, what are the other half of women in his cabinet? Are they women who are actually men? I mean, have we come to the place of this nutty stuff of transgenderism where that half the women are women, but the other half are something else? But then remember, he didn't say half the people in this administration are women and the other half are men or the other half are something else. He just said half are women, half of the women are women. What are the other half?
I'm doing my best to follow you.
Joe has really stumped us all on this one. Somehow half the women are women and the other half, well, they're anybody's guess. I guess you just have to watch and see which bathroom they go to determine, are they women or are they something else? It's just
another great use of the time of Biden's administration.
Wow.
Standing in the hallways, watching people come and go. So
well, we want to go to, we call this section Cringy Karine Jean-Pierre, because she, who is at the podium at the White House supposedly interpreting what the administration's position is, doesn't seem to understand some basic fundamentals of how the government really works. For example, when she is asked about Congress's role in the debt ceiling, she seems to think that the role they have is simply to just rubber stamp whatever the president might want. Basically, she said it. Watch.
This should be done without conditions. And it is their basic job, Congress, right? It is their basic duty to lift the debt ceiling.
No, it isn't their basic duty to lift the debt ceiling, Karine. You ought to read the Constitution. I mean, just once in your life. Obviously, you failed ninth grade civics. That's pretty evident. But if you ever read the Constitution, there's not one thing in there that says that the role of Congress is just to keep borrowing money until nobody will loan us any and we can't even print anymore. It is not the role of Congress. The role of Congress is to appropriate the money that we need, but that we actually have, and that if we borrow it, we can pay it back, which we cannot do anymore because we're borrowing about 120% of our entire GDP. It's like borrowing more money than your house is worth, but borrowing anyway, borrowing more than you make in your lifetime. I don't know where she comes up with this stuff, but she says it with such authority, as if we're supposed to just say, oh yeah, that's deep. That's really profound. No, it's stupid to say something like that. Forgive me for being so blunt, but that is just plain crazy.
Yet the press still sits there.
They sit there and they just let it go. Let it go. Now, she was also asked how many classified documents have been found in the possession of Joe Biden. You know, when he said that Donald Trump had classified documents, that was irresponsible. But she's asked, now that they keep finding more and more documents in Joe Biden's possession, just how many have they found?
Karine, what is the current number of documents bearing classified markings that have been found in the president's residences and offices?
I would refer you to the White House counsel's office.
And Ian just declined to comment on that as well.
There you go. You got your answer.
I mean, that's like whack-a-mole. I'll refer you to the White House counsel. First of all, the White House counsel doesn't talk to the press. If you've ever been around a White House, you understand that's not their role. Their role is to talk to the president. They counsel him, not the press. The purpose of the press secretary is to talk to the press. Every time she gets asked an uncomfortable question, she says, well, you had to talk to the White House counsel about that. This reporter at least followed up and said, we did talk to the White House counsel, and they said they wouldn't talk to us. And her response to that was, well, you got your answer. Now, keep in mind, Joe Biden said, and Karine has said, this is the most transparent White House in all American history. No, it isn't. It isn't even as transparent as if you opened all the windows and doors and let us peek into the bedrooms. This is the least transparent White House that I've ever seen. And I've seen some that hid stuff. The Nixon White House was pretty locked down. This is anything but transparent. In fact, Karine Jean-Pierre was asked about transparency with the documents scandal. She once again gives her classic answer for it.
I'm wondering how the White House can claim that they are being transparent when the FBI search of the Penn Biden Center that happened months ago was not proactively disclosed to the public, and what should the public take away from the fact that you are keeping information like this from the public?
Look, I'm going to be very prudent from here. I'm going to be very consistent from here. I'm just not going to comment anything that is related to what is currently happening.
You know, she was finally truthful. She said, I'm going to be consistent here, and I'm going to be clear. I'm not going to answer your question. She's consistent because she never answers a real question, and she's clear that she's very unclear. So
very
I give her
clear that she's not going to continue to do her job, but okay.
Sure, yeah. What is my job up here? To answer your questions. What am I not going to do? Answer your questions. I'm not even going to try.
Make sense of that.
And she doesn't. We had a real interesting thing this week, Pam. You know, Kevin McCarthy has kept a promise that I think we all sort of said, let's see if he does this one. And that is that he was not going to keep some of these far-left radical Democrats on committees they had no business being on. Good example, Adam Schiff, Intel Committee. This is the Adam Schiff that would hold up papers and say, I got evidence right here. Donald Trump colluded with the Russians. I've got evidence, hard evidence. But in 6 years, he never presented one scintilla of evidence. Never. $35 million of a Mueller investigation didn't find any. Adam Schiff didn't find any either, but he continued to lie, and lie some more, saying he had evidence. So he gets the boot. Eric Swalwell has a fling with Fang Fang, the Chinese spy, for heaven's sakes. What kind of deal is that? And he is just incensed that he's not going to be on the Foreign Intelligence Committee. Kevin McCarthy was told by the FBI things about that relationship that was such that he said, if you knew what I knew, there's no way that Eric Swalwell should be on any committee. He kept him off. And then on the Foreign Affairs Committee, Ilhan Omar was taken off because of her vicious anti-Semitic remarks, hatred of the Jews, insulting comments. And for that, the Democrats, well, they pretty much went berserk, starting with Karine.
Look, the way that we see this, it's a political stunt, much like House Republicans' unjust removal of other leading Democrats from key committees in recent weeks, and it is a disservice to the American people.
The disservice was that they were ever going to be on those committees in the first place. That's insane. And somehow, like out of all those members of Congress, a little over 200 in the Democrat caucus, that they were the only people capable of serving on those committees. That's just crazy. But Rashida Tlaib, who may be one of the most, frightening people to ever get elected to the House of Representatives, went on the floor. She did not respect the time that she was under, kept talking when she was being gavelled down. And really, it's like, y'all need to get this woman some help. Let's watch.
You are showing who you all are, really.
The gentlewoman's time has expired.
Omar will not be silenced.
The gentlewoman's time has expired.
To Congressman Omar, I am so sorry,
has expired.
That our country is failing you today through this chamber. You belong
The gentlewoman is no longer recognized, and the gentleman from Mississippi is recognized.
I hope that gentleman from Mississippi was ready, because he was getting recognized, whether she was just ready to quit being recognized. But
she got recognized all right.
oh, boy.
Wow.
We recognize her. It's like, stay away. Get back. As you know, we, in addition to having a comment from the week before, we always have a question of the day. This is our question of the day. We'd like for you to respond. Should Kevin McCarthy tear up Joe Biden's speech at the rostrum next week at the State of the Union? Leave your answers in the chat or in the comment section below. Continue to leave them even after the show. I think that would be just, it would be rude, but it would be kind of funny if at the end of his speech, Kevin stood up and ceremoniously ripped it in half and threw it down on the rostrum, because that's what Nancy Pelosi did when Donald Trump gave his State of the Union.
Right. Well,
And
we'll all be
thought-
tuned in Tuesday night for sure.
You know, I have it on good authority that the Republican response to the State of the Union is going to be delivered by a new governor of the state of Arkansas.
Do tell.
Yes. I've actually known about it for a week or so, but I couldn't talk about it because it was classified. And I didn't leave that information in my garage next to my car, so nobody found out until it was announced by Kevin McCarthy. But my daughter, Sarah, new governor of Arkansas, is going to be delivering the Republican response to the State of the Union, and I'm very excited about that.
How very exciting.
Yeah.
We'll definitely be tuned in for that part as well.
I will be watching it, even if I have to dismiss the entire audience because we're taping a show next Tuesday.
That's right.
And I may have to say, guys, I know we're not finished with the taping, but I'm finished. I'm going to go watch my
Worst
daughter.
comes to worst, we'll have Trey fill in.
That's it. Oh, would it come to that?
I don't know. We'll have to think about that.
By the way, if you've not subscribed to the channel, right now, I mean like right now is a good time to do it. When you do, hit the notification bell and be sure to hit the like button because we are trying really hard to get to 1,500 likes before this live stream ends. Helps us boost in the YouTube algorithm. That way more people get to see this video. And yeah, I know you want them to. So let's do that. All right. We've covered a lot of ground today. Let's go to some of the questions we're getting, and I'm sure we're getting quite a few.
And we are, Governor. Stephanie Ellis sent us a super chat as we first started today. How would you teach your own 5-year-old about transgenderism, like why she would maybe see a man in the girls' room? Do we as parents need to teach about transgenderism just to keep our daughters safe in public areas?
It's a really good question. Frankly, the sad thing is that we are even talking about having to talk to a 5-year-old about something that is really an adult issue. I would say to a 5-year-old, honey, there are some people who don't like the way that God made them, and so they're uncomfortable with that, and sometimes they dress up in ways that are not the way that they were made, and we just need to be nice to them and respect them. But if you ever see someone in your restroom, in the girls' restroom, who is dressed up like a girl but is a man, then you please leave that restroom and come find your mother immediately. That's what I tell her.
All right, so this week, the story, I think, of the Chinese spy balloon spotted over the U.S. Dale is writing today, should we take out those darn balloons? Why is there even a question about it?
The reason that they haven't done it, according to the Pentagon, is because they fear that if they pop the balloon, they don't know exactly where it will land, and it might do damage to people or property. And I think that's a reasonable thing. But what isn't reasonable is that it ever got over our airspace in the first place. And why didn't we pop that balloon when it was in the Aleutian Islands over Alaska as it floated toward us? Because there we could have popped it, and it would not have done any damage that we can think of. I don't know how it ever got to the place where we are letting the Chinese send a spy balloon, which is what it is, over our cities, over our military installations. And you would even think that over the military installations, they'd go ahead and bust it and let it fall and probably at least then capture it and see what they could get from it.
Well, Valerie Walker, who's writing today, has suggested that the governor of Montana bring the spy balloon down. So there you go. How about that?
I know the governor of Montana. He's a pretty good shot. He's a good hunter. I bet with the Weatherby 300 mag, he could get that thing
Probably
down.
take that thing right
I'll
down.
bet you he could.
Oh, my goodness gracious. Michelle writing today, Governor, age limits for presidential candidates. Americans don't want senile in the White House. Should there be?
I don't really like the idea of arbitrary age limits. I think it ought to be a voter decision. There are people who are, 75, even 80 years old, sound mind. I do think the presidency is such an intense job that it's hard to imagine that someone who is in their late 70s or into their 80s maybe have the physical and mental stamina for that, but maybe they could. I hate for it to be arbitrary because there is a lot of wisdom and a lot of capacity left with people. It's not about the age. I know some people who are 50 who I wouldn't trust to be in the White House. They're incompetent and they're not they don't have good judgment.
Right.
So I'm not sure I'd make it arbitrary, but I wish the voters would be a little more maybe discretionary when they decide to vote for somebody.
Well, Michelle Minnick actually wrote in too, I'm against age limits, but with age, and you said it, comes wisdom. I think they should maybe have to take cognitive tests, though.
Yeah, and the president has regular, very intense physicals, more than most of Americans do. They have a doctor that is literally on duty 24 hours of the day at the White House and travels with the president. He never goes anywhere without a doctor within about 25 feet of him. So it's not like he can't get tested. The question is he willing to get tested and to share the results of a cognitive test? I don't know why. If he is as in good a shape as he keeps claiming he is, he should want to take that test and demand that the results be released.
Like offer it up and just do it.
That's right. And say, I'll just show you I'm totally capable.
All right, a super chat for you this afternoon, Governor. Will former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley be nominated by GOP voters instead of Trump?
Should she or will she?
It said will former UN Ambassador. Will she?
There's going to be so many people in that primary, and it's hard to say who's going to emerge because everybody can speculate now, but we haven't had really the field that has been formed. Hadn't been a debate, hadn't been any campaigning. Everybody's out kicking tires. You've got Tim Scott, Mike Pompeo, Larry Hogan, former governor of Arkansas, Asa Hutchinson, Nikki Haley, Ron DeSantis. There could be a dozen other people. So I think it's a way too early bet to look at who's going to even be in, much less whether they have a shot at the nomination.
Right. Okay. Well, good. We'll move on to Stacia Howe. Okay. You okay, Mike, with all the smart stuff? You know, the smart technology spying on your family day in and day out. I'm going to make sure I read this right. Are you okay, Mike, with all the smart stuff you know, that the smart technology spying on your family day in and day out?
No, I am not okay with it. In fact, the reason that I do not have Alexa plugged in is because I don't want a listening device in my office or in my home. When it first came out, I thought, how cool is this? You just say, hey, Alexa, what's the weather going to be? Hey, Alexa, what time is it in Montreal? Then you realize, no, that means somebody is listening, or this algorithm is listening, but that means there's something behind it. And there is a device that's capturing everything that's being said in that room. I would not have that in my house.
Same for Google?
What's that?
Same for Google?
I don't use Google. I use DuckDuckGo. I refuse to use Google products. There have been times when we have certain documents that we have even for the show that are shared. I refuse to get them. I say, cut and paste them and send them to me. Because I think Google, here I'm on record, I think they're evil. I do. I think it's an evil, dominating corporation that wants to dominate the information world and give us their opinion of what they think is important and shove it down our throats, and I refuse to use them. So my search engine is not Google.
And all the more reason to follow us on Rumble.
It is DuckDuckGo.
So there you go.
There you go. Yep.
All right.
Okay. Let's go to some videos. This has been a tough week in Memphis, and I think anyone who saw the just horrible video of the beating of Tyree Nichols, I don't care what your view, where you're left, right, center, it doesn't matter. You see somebody just being beaten to a pulp. And regardless of what he did, when there's 5 cops beating him up like that, it was hard to watch. But what I don't understand is the reaction to it. These are 5 police officers, by the way, all of whom were black.
Right.
This is a black on black issue. You can't say this is a white issue. But believe it or not, there are some people who somehow come to the conclusion this is white supremacy, like this incredibly interesting woman.
Did this. White supremacy did this. I'm talking about Tyree Nichols. The police didn't do this. The Memphis Police Department didn't do this. White supremacy did this.
White supremacy did this. I don't understand how. There's a black police chief, a black mayor, and 5 black officers in Memphis who actually did the beating, okay? And somehow white people are responsible for that? This lady's a loon, an absolute loon. This wasn't about race. May have been about lack of training, lack of discipline on the part of those officers. They've all been charged with second-degree murder for this. So the one thing we want is when a cop gets out of line, goes rogue, you hold them accountable to the same standard of justice that they were saying they were going to hold this suspect to. That's what's happened. This ought not to be just a sense of the outrage about what happened to him, which it is. It's an affirmation that our system does in fact work. And when outrageous things were done to this young man who was unarmed, then justice is applied to even police officers. They don't have the right to do what they did to him, and they're paying the price and will be by going to trial, and then if they're found guilty, they will go to jail for a long, long time. Here's something most people, I think, also may not realize is that police officers killed twice as many white people as they did black people. This dates back to 2015. So according to data in the Washington Post, 50% of the victims of fatal police shootings were white, 26% were black. And the majority of those were people who were armed with a gun or some other type of threatening weapon, and they threatened the officer with potentially lethal force, according to Heather McDonald in a speech at Hillsdale College. 2009 stats from the Bureau of Justice Statistics revealed that blacks were charged with 62% of robberies, 57% of murders, and 45% of assaults in the 75 biggest counties in the country, despite only comprising roughly 15% of the population in those very counties. The takeaway here is that when you say, are you here? Or maybe you repeat, well, white cops are killing a disproportionate number of black people. It's just not true. I mean, that's just not what's happening. What is happening is that if a black person is killed by the police, and now we found it in Memphis, even by black police officers, it becomes the biggest story on the news. If a white person is killed by police officers, the media just says, well, it doesn't matter because he's not black. Look, every life matters. The life of a black person matters no less than the life of a white person. We shouldn't say one we ought to talk about and one that we shouldn't. It's just absolutely stunning. Yeah. We're almost out of time, aren't we?
Are we?
Wow.
My gracious, we are.
But I tell you, we've got to end with this. Good old Kamala Harris, and she loves herself some school buses. I can't think of a better way to kind of get near the end without letting her tell us about the color of a school bus.
Are these new green buses going to keep their signature yellow color?
These are going to remain yellow school buses because who doesn't love a yellow school bus? They will remain yellow, but their heart will be green.
All I can say is this is our vice president. It's just...
Absolutely.
Let's give this one more. This is the one where she is talking about collaborating with small businesses. And in classic Kamala style, realizing she's got speechwriters that are supposed to help her with these comments, here's how she frames this whole idea of doing the work.
We are doing the work that is about collaborating around the small businesses that will need to do the work that will be the result of all the trillions of dollars we're putting into the infrastructure of our country, including the almost $1 trillion that we're going to be putting into a whole new economy that is called a clean energy economy. Right?
All I can do is just scratch my head and say, thank you for enlightening us, Madam Vice President, because I would never have known the things that you said. And after you've said them, I still don't have a clue what you're talking about.